Well, welcome into another exciting episode of The Scene. I'm your host, Bubba Starts, and with me today is the Vice President of A.H. Meyer and Sons. They are Complete Hemp Processing. Ken Meyer. How you doing, Ken?
Good, Bubba. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Well, it's my pleasure, Ken. I've been a big fan for a long time, and I love what you do. But for people who don't know, can you give us a little backstory on, your guys' company and what got you into the hemp world eventually?
Yes, I can do that. Myself, my brother JB, my sister Melissa, have worked with our father, and before that with our grandfather, and we are fourth generation. The older two of us can remember our great grandfather in the beekeeping business is where we started out working together, and we're still very involved in that industry. So we have about 99 years of history as a business.
Almost a century of history in just the beekeeping business, and then just recently branching into, obviously, as industrial hemp has gained, finally has finally gained some ground in the world as we know it. What kind of prompted, I guess an easy transition really from the bees and already being in nature, right? And being in that world and very tuned into that. And then kind of discovering, how did your love affair, I guess, with the hemp plant start?
Right. Well, as you mentioned, already being in the agriculture space was a big help. When you run large numbers of beehives, you're working with a lot of farmers. You're locating your bees, obviously, on their properties, and so you know how to build those relationships. The thing that got us into hemp was the processing that we do for beekeepers. Some of the equipment that we use to process beeswax was suitable for also doing some of the hemp processing as it first got started in our state. And so that's where we started. And then as things came along, we got more and more interested in processing the hemp stock, and that's our focus now.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So you were already in the business before you ever had thought about it.
That's right. We already have processing equipment, processing experience, and so this just seemed to be a natural fit for us.
Yeah. So can you, for people who don't know, which is most people, I would assume, that really don't know the ins and outs of industrial hemp farming, can you kind of give us, and you don't have to be quick about it at all, but kind of give us, what it goes through? Obviously, we know you put a seed in the ground, you grow the plants. If you're familiar with the cannabis variety of plants, we're talking 12 to 14 foot trees, right? Planted very close together in big, beautiful fields all across the state of South Dakota every summer now. And now, once you cut that down, what are farmers doing with this, and what place does Complete Hemp Processing then play after the farmers have harvested?
Right. So just to back up just a tiny bit, the first important step for the farmer in their relationship with us is we provide the market for their bales. We don't recommend that anybody grow hemp without already having a contracted place for where it goes, because it is a starting up industry. It's a new crop again. And so you want to have a place where you're going to sell your bales. And so we give farmers contracts so that they know how much they're going to get paid for their hemp and where it's going. And then once it comes time for them to bring it, they're just baling it up in large round bales and bringing it to us just like you would see alfalfa bales being transported.
Awesome. So let's stop right there too. So right now, what would you say is the biggest constraint on South Dakota hemp farming?
The biggest is having enough processing infrastructure in place.
So more
The
guys like you.
process, yep, because the processors create that market, then the processors have the responsibility and the business models to have the offtake for the raw products. but that's what creates the market for the farmers.
And Ken,
And
what does the prospective markets look like for just a little business view?
right, so right now, the people we have contacts for to sell what comes out of the hemp stock include people that do plastics, people that do textiles, people that do packaging, people that want these fibers to go into special composites and for different parts in automobiles.
And for people who don't know, Ken, can you just describe kind of? I mean, I'm very aware and in tune with the hemp world and the many uses, but it's really its use in as a plastic, right, or as an ulterior to petroleum-based plastic products, correct? So we're talking the packaging, paper products, obviously, a lot of these things. So we have a renewable energy source that are not based in petroleum. That's kind of the major driver of this, right?
Yes, that's right. And so you can think of it as, in part, I know this is a little bit away from the plastics, but anything that you could make with a tree, you can make with a hemp plant. And depending where you live in the country, it's going to take 10, 20, 30 years for that tree to grow and to be harvested. And you can grow your hemp crop in 100 days.
It sounds silly that we haven't been doing this forever. And I mean, really, we have. I obviously can. We know the history of hemp, and we don't need to go all the way back to the beginning. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that human history has evolved right along with this plant, and I think the studies that show that. And that's just on the industrial medicinal hemp side, right? That's not even getting into the medical marijuana and cannabis, on that side of it at all. Amazing. So the markets are looking very strong. That's not even touching on, I know there was some exciting news this year about some of the agricultural uses for the hemp seed in particular. Can you speak about that a little bit for our listeners?
Yes. So right now, the protein that comes from the hemp seed is approved and has been for years as a safe food for human consumption, and it's a very good protein. Some people call it a super feed, and that protein right now is not legally available to people with their cattle. It's not approved to be fed to cows, and that's because there's different rules and hurdles that have to be navigated to get that approved for an animal feed source. There's a group called the Hemp Feed Coalition that has done tremendous work in this area. They have gotten right close to the finish line to where you can feed the hemp protein to laying hens. And they're going to use some of that same research to move on and do the extra steps they need to do so that it's also approved as a feed for cattle. And that's going to be very big in agriculture because, of course, anyone with a cattle operation wants to have as many options as possible close to the farm for that protein source.
Right. Are they able to feed now? Is it just the protein source that they're feeding to the cattle? Or are they able to feed stalks and other stuff to it? I guess I'm a little unaware of the ins and outs of that side of it.
Sure. The stock itself, especially as it's cut and dried, it does not have much food value for cattle. It's that protein that farmers that know about this are really looking for in the future.
Well, because you're going to get a much healthier meat from that, I would assume, because mostly what these cows are feeding on now is either grass and really most of these cows are eating corn or soy, right, in these feedlots, which I have to imagine the protein value is almost nil. None of the omegas, none of the fatty, all the good things that are in the hemp seed, right, that are so good for human consumption, and just seems absolutely ludicrous that you can't feed it to your cow.
Right.
So we hope that now, and you said with it being approved for the laying hens, that's the first domino, and then the rest of them successively should be coming to that. So that would mean that then the hemp market is getting ready to really explode on the national stage, I would imagine, once that domino does fall. Is that a fair assessment, Ken?
Yeah, that's definitely fair. Um, right now, the human consumption market is fairly large. Up in Canada, they have 60,000 acres of hemp. Canada dominates the hemp protein for human consumption market. And so we'll be able to also get into that. But what happens when you can feed the protein to cows is it de-risk um, the situation for the farmer, because sometimes you're not going to make grade for human consumption, but it will be healthy for a cow. And so then there will always be a market for the hemp
So
grain.
even just for the farmers that are already farming, they're losing some of that product inevitably to a different grade status, right? And they've just been throwing this away.
Uh, Correct.
Until now, we can feed it to hens, and then as time goes on here, we'll see it fed to cattle. That's huge news, Ken. I mean, is that as exciting for someone now? Are you processing? I know that you're mainly processing the fiber side. Is that correct?
That's right. We're a hemp stock processing facility, not an oil seed crushing plant.
Right. And you know what? I know Derek Doman, his business is in more of that fashion, right? Derek's a mutual friend with Horizon Hemp Seeds for our listeners.
Right. Horizon Hemp Seeds does not have a processing facility in South Dakota, but they are looking at models where they would buy the grain and buy it in state and then get it processed.
Right, right. Well, and just, travel is really what it comes down to. You can grow as much, hemp as you like, but like you said, without the processing capabilities, it really having nowhere to go, a farmer's not going to grow something that they can't sell. Which I mean, that's just good business, right? But it's interesting as these places keep cropping up, and it's really necessary. And I guess what I've always equated it to is it's no different really from a grain elevator, really, from what a co-op or something of that kind of provides with the storage is kind of what you're doing. You're saying, hey, man, we got the machine to work through all of this stuff. We'll take it and store it, or take it as it comes and process it and having a great, and I'm sure the guarantees for the farmers are assurances are always great in the farming community, I would assume.
Kind of along with what you're saying, we see as a model that almost every town that has a grain elevator in eastern South Dakota is probably going to be a good candidate for one of these hemp stock processing facilities. And then a few of those communities will also be good candidates for also processing the hemp grain.
Right. Right. So I just think of the business that the hemp industry is going to bring to small town America over the next quarter century, Ken. I just can't help but be invigorated to be and for me, I'm just adjacent. The reason that we're having you on today is really to talk about some things that we're working on later in the year that we're excited to tell everybody about, and we'll get to. But the really something that we've seen coming for a long time is finally at the precipice. And for you, it must be so exciting after all the years and years of hard work to kind of feel the wave building and to kind of be just riding it now and to be in it. Is that kind of the feeling it is for you guys?
Definitely. And we felt a lot of that excitement just having recently attended as a South Dakota hemp industry, the national hemp event that's held each year in Colorado. And what we saw that was really different was that in the past, you went to that show and it was focused on the cannabinoid hemp. And now this show was largely focused on industrial hemp for grain and fiber. There were equipment dealers there from the US and from Europe. And there were other people there from Canada, really all over the world, because hemp was never prohibited in most of the world for industrial uses. So now that the US market is coming along, they're watching this market as well.
It's it's just got to be wild. Can you Yeah, the agriculture community has bought in now, right? And you have the full sale, and it's kind of what I've said to people that I've talked about it, because I've had these conversations for the last several years, especially since I moved from the Black Hills and into a farming community of Tyndall, and saw a little bit of it. And I know we know some of the same people down here, and I was like, hey, you might want to pay attention to this. Like, this is coming. I've had my kind of, eyes on the whole scene for a long time. So I know who the players are, and you should really be talking to these people now, because I kind of saw this coming, back in 2020 and 2021, when I first moved to the area. And see how well the stuff grows. I've been to a couple fields out here, and I don't know that I've ever been happier to be a South Dakotan living in farm country than I was those days.
Along those lines, South Dakota really is a great place to grow hemp as another row crop in rotation with corn and soybeans. Uh, Recently, I posted on social media, and you probably saw that the USDA numbers came out for the 2023 grow season. And for production of hemp fiber as a crop, South Dakota was the number one state in three categories. Number one, acres harvested. Number two, yields per acre. And three, total production. And what I think is really exciting is even with having that scaled up, bigger production than any other state, our yields per acre were still more than any state. So it shows this is a really good place to get good yields and get good profits on the
South
farm.
Dakota is where you grow hemp. And I think I can't wait to tell the world. Ken, it's so important, the conversation that we're having today, and just trying to amplify your voice. You are my hemp guru. Any questions that I have, you're my go-to, and for good reason. You're very knowledgeable about it. You care about not only the plant, but you care about your relationships with the farmers as well. It's all kind of relationships with you guys. I assume running a family business has kind of built that into the model.
Right. And then just having a business that is now four generations, you try not to be the weak link, right? Keep it
Yeah.
going.
Yeah. It's so amazing. Your guys' story. And we're going to have you on again just to kind of talk about that. But I mean, really, the reason that we're kind of on today is to stir up a little excitement about an event that we're going to be putting on together. And we're going to have you on in Mitchell. May 25th, we're throwing a big party at Dr. Lucky's, letting everybody know the corner is 2nd and Main in Mitchell. We're going to have some live music that night, but during the day, Ken, we're going to have you and some friends out and kind of giving some presentations for our community and doing some educating. Can you kind of talk about what you and your partners do as far as, when you go to these different events and kind of sharing your knowledge?
Right. Yeah. We're really excited that you extended the invitation to us to participate and be in a little different public setting and do education on farming hemp. We will have Derek Dolman there with Horizon Hemp Seeds. And Derek is kind of like a quiet giant in the hemp industry. He and his father, Dave Dolman, are really led out in the whole region in bringing certified seed varieties, first from Canada and now from other places, and making them available to South Dakota farmers. And then John Peterson will be there from Wakanda, South Dakota, Dakota Hemp. He is a fifth generation farmer, and he was excited to get into hemp farming about 3 years ago. And every year he's growing more hemp. The first year was 37 acres, then he was 100 acres, and now we're getting to this current grow season. He'll be at 500 acres.
That's
And
amazing.
John is working on putting up a second decortication facility, and has been purchasing hemp fiber bales from farmers for 2 years, and is going into his third year. And then I will be there wearing two hats. One as president of the South Dakota Industrial Hemp Association, and then also my involvement in our family business with our hemp stock processing facility.
Fantastic. Can you talk about the Industrial Hemp Association a little bit since we got you on the topic?
You bet. The South Dakota Industrial Hemp Association formed for the primary reason in the beginning of uniting our voices and representing the interest of hemp farmers, processors, retailers, and other connected parties in our state capital and peer, because hemp is for now still a regulated industry. Farmers and processors have to be licensed. And so we wanted to make sure that South Dakota agreed with not putting any more regulations on our farmers than what are required under the federal legislation.
Fantastic. Yeah. And that's, it's a shame that there's so much more extra red tape to it. And that's probably what's kept the industry. And that's obviously what's kept the industry from growing, you know, in total. And now that some of that red tape is starting to get repealed, we hope that they continue to make it easier and easier for farmers to farm hemp. I mean, they just want to grow a viable crop. That's all our farmers out here want to do.
That's right. And so, other things that the South Dakota Industrial Hemp Association does is we have hemp field tours, hemp field days during the summer. We make sure that we're at some of the farm shows in the state. And last year, for the first time, we also had a presence and will continue going to the state fair so that we can try to reach a broader and broader audience and show them that this isn't too hard to do.
No, and in fact, it's in some ways it's a lot easier than some of the other crops to grow, is it not?
Yes, if you're growing the hemp stock for the fiber production, you just have to plant it. Later, you cut it down, you let it dry, and do a process called retting, and then you windrow it up, bale it, and bring it into the processor.
So no different than what they're doing with their alfalfa, really.
Right.
Easy peasy. Farmers, get a hold of Ken Meyer and figure out how you can help move the movement. It sounds like we need more business people that are interested in investing in decortication facilities and processing facilities all over the state. The market is wide open, and I hope that our farmers realize it, and hopefully they start to cooperate with one another and just make their own facilities. Ken, how much of an investment is it for one of these facilities to come about? I mean, is it an exorbitant investment that not the common people can't get together 4 or 5 investors and make it happen?
So to take care of about 2,000 acres with a facility that runs 2 or 3 shifts to cover that acreage, which from year to year the yields will vary a little bit. It's going to take about somewhere between $1 to $2 million investment in the equipment, and that should be located in a footprint of about 30,000 square feet for the building.
Right. So for 1.3 million and a 30,000 square foot building, which a lot of these guys probably already have something that size on their property, you can be running this stuff, and you're talking about something that's on the ground floor and is going to do nothing but grow for the next, 100 years probably.
That's right. That's the way I see it. I'm glad you agree.
Well, yeah, this is going to get your family hopefully to an 8th generation of family businesses. And I don't see it going anywhere, Ken. I don't see how a plant that can literally change the world isn't going to do just that. The floodgates have been opened. You're seeing it year by year, how the industry is growing, like you said, just coming from NOCO last week, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so that The agriculture industry is bought in now. We're really happy to provide a space for you guys to kind of bring that more into the mainstream of South Dakota consciousness as well. These people need to know, hey, this is just as important as corn and soybeans and hogs and cattle. This plant is going to save South Dakota farms, and it's going to keep South Dakota farms in their families for generations to come. And I hope people realize that it's not just some silly plant, right? That the stigmas that we have fought against for years are slowly being repealed. The truth is being revealed, and people are waking up to the business of what hemp is. And yeah, I couldn't be more excited to be working very closely with you now, Ken. Like I said, I've been a big fan and follower for a long time, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing some of your knowledge today.
You bet. Thank you for the opportunity, and we look forward to seeing you, the rest of your group, and everybody that comes out for your event on May 25th.
Yeah, well, we're going to have a great time, man. We just got all of our approvals from the city council, and so it's starting to feel real now, and it's really just out to telling the people, and you did a big part in that today, and I thank you so much for your time, Ken.
You're welcome.
All right, and to all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in to The Scene, and we'll see you next time. You've been listening to The Scene. Follow along on all your social media channels and go to patreon.com/thescenesd and make yourself part of The Scene.